Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Dsgb Fantasy Football League Weekly Recap. I'm your host and commissioner, AST1. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and follow me if you like content like this. Let's not waste any more time and let's get into the recap. Before I start, let's give our thoughts and prayers to running back Nick Chubb. He had a devastating leg injury on Monday Night Football. For those who didn't know, I'm a huge UGA fan, and I will always represent and show love to a fellow Bulldog. I also want to give thoughts and prayers to two-way sensation Travis Hunter from the Colorado Buffaloes. He took a nasty cheap shot on Saturday, and I'm hoping for a speedy recovery for him. Now, let's go over my commissioner notes, which are the things I noticed in Week 2. Number 1, the injury bug. The injury bug is part of the game of football. When players decide to play football at an early age, it comes with the territory. However, in fantasy football, it can literally destroy a league manager's team. Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, David Montgomery, Nick Chubb, Jamal Williams, Odell Beckham Jr., Anthony Richardson, Zay Jones, Jalen Waddle, and DK Metcalf, to name a few, suffered injuries over the weekend, and those injuries dictated the outcomes of games. That's why it's important to build a deep roster. Number 2, too many points on the bench. Every year it happens. You are indecisive in your lineup, whether it's due to matchups, vague health status, or just flat out, who in the world am I starting? Then the games start and the player you benched goes off. Brian Robinson Jr., Russell Let's Ride Wilson, Raheem Mostert, George Pickens, Marquis Hollywood Brown, Geno Smith, Lamar Action Jackson, Kieran Williams, and rookie wide receiver sensation, Puka Nacua. All had outstanding games for their respective teams while on the bench. Oh, one more thing before I forget. I would like to give a personal shout out to Menace to the League for drafting my quarterback Kirk First Cousins, who also had a monster game on Thursday Night Football while on his bench. First Cousins was 31 of 44 for 364 yards, 4 touchdowns on a 70% completion percentage. Thanks, Menace. Moving right along. Let's look at the top 5 performers from Week 2 in fantasy. Number 5 is a tie between running back Brian Robinson Jr. and wide receiver T. Higgins. They both scored 28.9 fantasy points for their respective team. Brian Robinson Jr. had 18 carries for 87 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, to go along with 2 receptions for 42 yards receiving. T. Higgins had 8 receptions for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both players had incredible games and looked to build on it in Week 3. Number 4 was wide receiver Mike Evans. He had 6 receptions on 8 targets for 171 yards and 1 touchdown. Evans' monster game gave him 29.1 fantasy points for the day. Number 3 was rookie wide receiver Puka Nacua. Puka had 15 receptions on 20 targets for 147 yards. He had an NFL record with 25 receptions in his first 2 games. As long as Cooper Kupp is on the injured reserve, he should continue this insane pace. He finished the day with 30.1 fantasy points. Number 2 was wide receiver Keenan Allen. Allen had 8 receptions for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. Allen had 31.1 fantasy points for the day. And number 1 goes to my quarterback Daniel Stephen Jones III. Jones was 26 of 37 for 321 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also got it done with his legs. Daniel Jones had 9 carries for 59 yards and 1 touchdown. He had 33.9 fantasy points and definitely redeemed himself from his Week 1 performance. Now let's take a look ahead at Week 3 matchups. First up, we have a matchup between a couple of 2-0 teams, the football team versus Hancock County, Georgia. The defending champion, the football team, pulled out a close win against Crimson Ballers in Week 2. He looks to fight off Hancock County, Georgia, who was the Week 2 highest scorer. Hancock will look to the services of Jordan Love and Brian Robinson Jr. His star running back Saquon Barkley was ruled out of Week 3 with an ankle injury. The odd makers has the football team as an 8.5-point favorite. Up next, we have NY Giants versus Z Boys. Both league managers are coming off impressive Week 2 wins. with NY Giants dominating the Apocalypse and Z-Boys getting help from quarterback Josh Allen and wide receivers Gabe Davis and Adam Thielen over Team Untouchables. The Oddmakers has NY Giants as a 19.5-point favorite. Next we have Summertime versus the Apocalypse. The Apocalypse caught the onslaught of NY Giants team in Week 2 and is looking forward to facing a two-time champion in Summertime that has a lot of confidence coming into Week 3 after a thrilling win against Team Harding in Week 2. The Oddmakers again has Summertime as a +16 underdog. Can he beat the odds 2 weeks in a row? Next we have Bristol Vikings versus Team Untouchables. Last week Team Untouchables was quite confident in winning his Week 2 matchup. Unfortunately, he forgot to tell his team to come play, and as a result he had the lowest scoring total from Week 2 with 83.1 fantasy points. On the other side we have Bristol Vikings, who is still in search of his first win in over a year and a half, and according to the Oddmakers, they have little faith in his ability this week to get a win because they have him as a +6.5-point underdog. Up next we have Dream Team Redemption versus Team Harding in a battle of two winless teams. Both league managers had close games in their respective matchups. Dream Team had the second highest score of the week, but unfortunately he was going against Hancock County, Georgia, who had the highest score for Week 2. Team Harding looks to bounce back from a heartbreaking loss against Summertime in Week 2. The Oddmakers have Dream Team Redemption as a 6.5-point favorite. Last but not least, we have a family matchup with Crimson Ballers versus Menace to the League. Crimson Ballers had a heartbreaking defeat at the hands of the football team. On the other side of this contest, Menace to the League kept Bristol Vikings' winless streak intact. He will look to show the newcomer Crimson Baller who's the big dog in this Week 3 matchup. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy this content. Comment below who you think will win their matchup this week. Until next time, AST1 signing off.